Hello there everyone, elbow bump. I want to show you today how I'm going to make some of the envelopes out of my 12 by 12 papers to go in my new journal, which I'm calling the Love Letters journal, but I've only ever had 3. So I'm going to use mine for some letters that I've received and messages that I've received throughout the years that I've been crafting. So I'm going to store them in here rather than keep them in the box under my bed. So I want to show you this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my envelope punch board, and I'm going to make the biggest one that I can. Because my journal is 9 inches tall, it means that the 8.5 inches tall envelope is going to fit nicely within my journal. So I need a piece of paper that's 11.5 inches by 11.5 inches. Okay, so the first thing I need to do is to cut this. Now, under normal circumstances, I would pull this top arm out and I'd measure to the 11.5 inches that it suggests. Now, because there's no bed here, sometimes the paper can fall flimsily, and it's quite difficult sometimes to cut the larger pieces of paper. So what I'm going to do is, instead of using the long arm, I'm going to use the measurement on the right hand side of where the paper cuts, and I'm going to line it up with the 1/2 inch mark there, because I know that I only need to take 1/2 inch up, and make sure that it lines up. Slide it down at the top as well, and then put my trimmer down and cut, and then spin it and do the same the other side. So line it up with the 1/2 inch, make sure it's lined up at the top as well, trimmer down, and that now gives me a piece that's 11.5 inches square. Sorry about the creaking. That's my chair, not my bottom, that's my chair. Okay, so it says that I need to place the first piece on 4 7/8. So I'll get my little folder out there, my little bone folder, and I'm going to place the edge of the paper here on 4 7/8. And then I'm going to punch so that the camera might wobble. Now, when you first do this score, the 11.5 inch paper goes off the edge of the actual board itself. So just be mindful of the fact that it runs off, and only do it as far as the board will go, which for me is about there. So I'm going to run it back up, run it back down, and then I'm going to remove the board and then physically fold using this part that I've already scored, and this part that isn't scored will just automatically follow along the same line, and then I can burnish it down. And then I use this score line that I've created to then line it up with the little prong bit that's sticking out here. So I line that up on the score line, and then I punch again. Now this side actually fits onto the board, so I can run that right the way down to the end of the paper. So I don't need to fold and score that. And then, sorry, fold and burnish, that is what I meant to say. Then I can spin it again, and again with this little prong, line it up with that score line that I've just done, punch, and then again this one, look, again runs off the edge of the board. So I'm going to run it down as far as it will go, and then I'm going to take it off the board, fold it. This will now automatically follow, burnish it, and then again line that fold, that score line up with that little prong, punch, and score again. Now I can then spin my envelope punch board round, and this side of the punch actually will now round these corners off. So I've now got these rounded corners on my envelope. So now I can fold the two short sides in and burnish those. And then fold the bottom up and the top down. Now some people don't like this part here, but what you can do, creaky chair and all, is you can line a ruler up from this side flap to this side flap, and then you could draw a line across that part there where the points meet here, and you can then cut that off. And so it looks like that then when you open it up. Now, if you're using a directional paper, you'll just need to have a think about it, because if I open this up, at the moment it's on the diamond, but if I turn it round and make it so that it's that square again, you can see that it takes over the middle part on the diagonal. So it means that if you're using a directional paper, when it comes to making the envelope up, the pattern is going to go around that way, and it will go across diagonally, so it might look a little bit odd. So you might want to just have a little think about the papers that you're using if it's directional. Okay, so then you would fold those two shorter flaps in, and you can place some glue along the edge of the flaps here, and then stick that bottom flap down. Now, I'm not going to do that for the time being, because I'm going to decorate my envelopes up and maybe even do some stitching on. But I've made about half a dozen of these already, but I now want to show you a different type of envelope that I'm also going to be using in this journal. So I'll see you back here in a sec, and I'll show you the next one that I'm going to do. The second envelope that I want to show you is like a policy type envelope, which normally is narrow but long. Now, do you remember when I made my boo-boo in the first video, and I said that I was going to leave this as a pocket, and then I went and stuck it down? Okay, so I said at the time I've come up with an idea. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make two of these policy envelopes and stick them on the inside cover. Now I'm going to have to avoid the very edge here, because I need to punch some eyelet holes in there, but I'm going to get them to fit in there, and I'm going to glue them around three sides, so then I've also got a pocket underneath the policy envelope, as well as being able to use the envelope itself. All right. Now, I also want to make some policy envelopes that are going to fit in sideways. And what I mean by that, and I'm going to show you this as the example, although it's too big, but I want to fit two envelopes in down onto the hinges that I've made. So I need to be aware of sizes more with these two that I'm going to put in sideways on, as opposed to putting them in lengthways. Right. The way in which we make the policy envelope is that there's a flap here at the bottom to close it up, and there's a flap here at the top, which is the part of the envelope flap. We've also then got a back panel, we've got the front panel, and then we've got a little side hinge as well. So I've drawn a pictorial diagram of this because we need to be aware of some of the measurements that we're going to need. Now we know that if we're going to put this envelope in sideways on, the depth of my cover is 9 inches. So the half of that is 4.5. But I want to make them just fractionally smaller so that they're not going to extend beyond the top and bottom of the cover. So I'm going to make that 4.25 inches wide. So this part here and this part here come into play at this point. So this piece I want to be 4.25 inches wide. This piece I want to 4 1/8 inches wide. The little flap here on the side, I want that to be 1/2 inch. The little flap on the bottom, I want to be 1/2 inch. And the flap at the top, I want to be 1.5 inches. Okay. Now the actual depth of the finished envelope, I want it to be able to fit in sideways on. So I need to take into account the width of the actual cover, which is 6 3/8, thereabouts. Yeah, thereabouts. So I want to make it a 6-inch long envelope. So this way is going to be 6 inches. All right. So I now need to add all these measurements up so that I know what size piece of paper I'm going to need. So for the width of it, I need to add up 1/2 inch for the flap, 4 1/4 inch for that front panel, and 4 1/8 inch for the back panel. So let's see if my mathematics works. 4, 8, 8.5, 8.5, 8 3/4, 8 3/4 and 1/8 is 8 3/4 and 1/8 makes it 9. Is that right? Oh, we'll come to test that out in a minute. Let's do it on my ruler. So I've got 4 1/4, which is there, plus 4 1/8, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 1/8, and then I want 1/2 inch, which is another 4 on top of that, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, so 8 7/8. Ooh, rubbish at maths. 8 7/8. I will go off and double check that in a minute when I get off camera. And then the height of this wants to be the 1/2 inch flap at the bottom plus the 6-inch length of the actual pouch part of the envelope, and then the 1.5 inch flap at the top. Oh, this is easier to add up. 6, 7, 7.5, and half is 8. Okay, so I need a piece of paper that measures hopefully 8 7/8 by 8 inches. If you don't understand the mathematics of that, just put that up closer so you can see. That's fine. Just fold it and guess. All right, so let's get to cutting, and I'll just double check my measurements before I do cut. Okay, I double checked my measurements and I think I'm right. So it's 8 inches tall by 8 7/8 inches wide. So let's get down to a bit of scoring. I want it on that side. So I want 1/2 inch on this left hand side. So we'll do that one first. The next measurement is then 4 1/4, but it's 4 1/4 from this 1/2 inch. So 4 1/4 plus 1/2 inch takes us to 4 3/4. And then this then becomes the back panel, okay, which should be 4 1/8. And then I'm going to spin it, and I'm going to score at 1.5 inches. And then from this bottom edge here, I'm going to come in 1/2 inch and score at 1/2 inch there. And then I'm going to fold and burnish those scores. Now I want to cut away some of this excess paper, and I'm going to cut this bit away, this bit away, this little bit here, and this tiny little square down at the bottom. So I'm going to cut those away now with my scissors. You can do it on the paper trimmer if you want, and I'm going to cut on the inside edge of those fold lines. And I'm just cutting them off square for now. Because what I want to do is I want to taper off the flaps that are left. Okay, so I want to taper off 1, 2, 3, which means just cutting a very tiny little triangle off the end. And when I say tiny, I mean, there you go, tiny, teeny tiny. And I'm going to do that on those 3 flaps. So I'm then left with this, and what will happen is that side flap will fold over, and I'll put glue on the very inside edge of that piece of paper, and also on the inside edge of this piece of paper, so that when I glue the two together it folds over nicely and is adhered properly. And then I'll put glue on this bottom edge to fold up, to put along the bottom to close the pocket. Now what you can do is you can put a thumb hole, which is using a circle punch normally, across this top edge here, so that when you close it all up, you've got that thumb hole to be able to access inside what's inside of the pocket, and then that will flip down. Okay, now I'm not going to glue mine down for a moment because I want to go through how I'm going to decorate these envelopes up, but I just wanted to show you how I made that. And then that will then stick in there. And because I know what size I'm making it to, it means that I can fit 2. So I can fit 1 at the top and 1 at the bottom, and they will sit in comfortably with inside the actual journal cover itself. So that's the 2 types of envelopes that I've made that are going to go in this journal. I'm going to use some other envelopes as well, but as I go through decorating each of them, you'll see what I'm going to use. And I'll see you all again soon in the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.